So, I was thinking, well, actually, I was reminded of a movie that I was obsessed with as a kid. And I felt it to the very core of my being. And it was always Ella Enchanted. I watched that movie back to back to back to back because we had it on DVD. I watched it all the time. I watched it all the way up through adulthood when I actually, well, I had that period of time where I actually had to, when I moved, I left everything behind. So I have no game system, nothing to play DVDs on, none of that. I don't even have DVDs anymore. And most of my books were left behind too. So when I saw that it was on one of the streaming sites that I just so happened to have, I was just like, all right, I gotta go back and watch this. And I can't tell you how spot on that freaking movie felt to me. And that's how I felt growing up. Like I was cursed with fucking obedience. And it was just like, I couldn't say no. It was just like whatever anybody told me, I had to do. Like freaking Vampire Diaries when they just look into their eyes and be like, go and do whatever and the person has to do it. Like that type shit. And it made me wonder, like, well, I already know that compulsion is a real thing, imposing your will on somebody is a real thing. I mean, they don't put the shit in the movies. I used to think they was playing in our face, but maybe that's just the only way that they can like relay that this shit exists without people just completely and utterly deeming them crazy. Because if you go and you start telling everybody on the streets, hey, compulsion is a real thing, somebody can literally look in your eyes and tell you to do something, and you would have to do it if they're, strong enough, or whatever the case is. Like, to tell people that sounds insane. A lot of spiritual things sound insane. And something I learned also is that even to another person who has their own spiritual experiences, your path may also seem insane because when you take a path that is less traveled or not traveled at all, there is nobody that can give you any kind of confirmation about what you're doing because no one's ever done it before or very few have done it. And I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, back to the movie. So I was thinking about the movie, and like that's really how I felt. I felt like I was cursed with fucking obedience, and there was no way I could just say no, even when I really wanted to. And it reminded me of something that I was told. And it's funny because it wasn't just Ella Enchanted. It was like movies about like horses that people kept trying to break in that were never broken, or books. Actually, it started with the book. Black Beauty was one of my favorite books as a kid. And then the Spirit movie, yeah, that one too. And I was obsessed with these types of movies, and I watched them whenever I could. And Black Beauty, I read that was probably the first book that I have read more than once. And it was it just reminded me of something that I was told about how if you're going to like create a familiar in the physical plane, you have to break their spirit. And I have always been against that. Like I used to actually when I was a kid, I used to want horses. But then when I was told that in order to train a horse properly, you have to break them, I was like, I don't want a horse anymore. I would rather it be wild and free than to sit there and break a horse's spirit. because that's not me. That's not what I do. Like it just felt wrong to even hear it. And so I was just like, no, I that's not for me. And so I kind of gave up on my want for horses. But then as I became an adult, like I actually heard that now they train them, and that's an option now. Like now you can actually train the horse rather than breaking them. And that made me feel better because I was just like, why would you even, like, what's the point? What's the point of having anything if you have to break them? And that's kind of the take that I had with my kids too. Like, I don't want them to be broken like I was. I don't want them to be beat into submission to where they have to listen to everything that I say. Like, what's the point of having kids? Why not just build a fucking robot? It would probably be cheaper and last longer. But yeah. But thinking about that also made me wonder if that's the reason why some people are like breaking spirits of children to basically turn them into mindless familiars that have to do all of their bidding. And like, that's crazy to me. Like, it's just something about it just felt weird. But there's a lot of like stories coming out now that I've been hearing, and that's what it sounds like. It sounds like whatever energy or entity is in possession of some of these people, or even if it's just the people, because let's be honest, it's not always a fucking entity. Sometimes it's just the free will of the fucking person acting. It's not always something piloting. But yeah, it just made me think, like, because, like, humans do have free will, but if you break them enough, then they won't move. And I think that I've actually witnessed some people who have been broken. And even after the people who broke them are long gone, they can't continue like they should be able to because they're so far gone, and they really need help. But the type of help that these people need is not going to be able to come from just anybody. And like I can think of like one specific example. And yeah, it's sad to me because I don't like seeing broken spirits. And I feel like even the most dark things that I've encountered aren't quite like that. And I've been getting chased by dark things my whole life. But yeah, that was just a thought that I had. So, yeah, absolutely fucking not. Absolutely fucking not.